In this video, I will be explaining how to solve linear equations. This will correspond to standards FO4 and FO5. Without further ado, let's get in. The problem we'll be solving is y prime equals 1 minus y all times cosine of x with the initial condition that y of pi equals 2. Okay. The first step in these problems is to write them in the correct format so that we can read off the correct information. This is the linear format, so it needs to look like y prime plus p of x times y equals q of x. And importantly, p of x and q of x do not feature y in any way, shape, or form. Alright, so this is just a little bit of algebra. First we distribute out the 1 minus y over the, or the cosine of x over the 1 minus y, yielding y prime equals cosine of x minus cosine of x times y. And then we move the y term to the left-hand side, producing y prime plus cosine of xy equals cosine of x. This makes our p of x equal to cosine of x, and our q of x also equal to cosine of x. Alright, we obtained p and q in order to get this integrating factor, which will lead us to the actual solution of the equation. So the integrating factor is the exponent of the integral of p of x. So this is the exponent of the integral of cosine, which becomes the exponent of sine, or e to the sine. Alright. We multiply the linear equation by this integrating factor. You see e to the sine x show up next to the y prime, the cosine of xy, and next to the cosine of x on the right-hand side. And this turns the left-hand side into an instance of the product rule, y times e to the sine of x. If you were to take the derivative of y times e to the sine x, you would get e to the sine x times y prime, plus y times the derivative of e to the sine of x, which is e to the sine of x times cosine x, which is exactly what we have on the left-hand side. Alright, this is what allows us to actually solve the problem. We now have a derivative on one side and some normal things on the right-hand side. So this turns into an integral problem. Y e to the sine of x is equal to the integral of cosine of x times e to the sine of x. This is an integral problem, but it's not a trivial integral problem. We do have to use u substitution. Okay, so u will be sine of x, du will be cosine of x. In this case, the integral just becomes e to the u du with no further complications. So y e to the sine of x is just e to the u plus c. And plugging u equals sine of x back in, we get y e to the sine of x equals e to the sine of x plus c. Okay, now we can divide out by e to the sine of x to isolate y. You will always be able to isolate y in the linear problems. It's always just multiplied by a function of x that you divide out through by. So e to the sine x divided by e to the sine x is 1, and c divided by e to the sine x is e to the negative sine of x. This is the general solution. If this were FO4, we would be finished solving the problem at this point. Since this is actually FO5, though, we do have to use the initial value to solve for c and get the particular solution to this initial value problem. So if you remember, we had that y of pi equals 2. So that means we plug in x equals pi and y equals 2 into the equation we just had, yielding 2 equals 1 plus c e to the negative sine of pi. As sine of pi is 0, that makes e to the 0, and then as e to the 0 is 1, we're left with 2 equals 1 plus c, or 1 equals c. Therefore, the solution to this initial value problem is 1 plus e to the negative sine of x.